I think the hardest part in the early stages was just keeping going, right? Because there's a long period of time where it wasn't obvious that Bubble was going to become a successful company. And we had enough customers who liked us enough to have that, thin strand of hope. But when you're living in like a tiny little New York City apartment, barely making rent, trying to squeak through, you sort of cling on. And then once we started getting a little bit more traction and our customer base started growing, then the challenges became all about scaling, right? Because customers depend on us. They build their businesses on top of us. We are the center of their tech stack. So we have a pretty big obligation. And if we screw up, it has a big impact on our customers.
Welcome to High Agency, igniting conversations with inspiring people, leading transformative change. Welcome to High Agency at Web Summit. We're talking to founders, builders, and thinkers. I'm Mo Dhaliwal, and I'm here with Josh Haas, co-founder and co-CEO of Bubble. Josh, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to be chatting with you. Your first trip to Vancouver, I'm sure you're very busy. The floor is very active. And, diving in, want to touch a little bit on the fact that you have a philosophy degree. So this is going to be a bit of a Socratic dialogue, right?
Amazing.
Very probing. So, anybody that's been working in web application development, any type of automation, even a little bit, has heard of Bubble. Everybody knows exactly what Bubble is. And there's a lot of love for the platform and the ecosystem you guys have created. I want to talk a little bit about your journey first, because there was the philosophy degree,
Right.
and you went into asset management and finance, and then went out of that and you were like, okay, now I want to democratize software development.
Yep.
So what was going on?
Yeah, there's actually more of a through line than it sounds like. I got into software pretty early. When I was a kid, both my parents worked for IBM, so I got access to the internet, maybe 2 or 3 years, before most of my peers. And my dad showed me the basics of programming. I fell in love with it. Mostly making computer games. I thought I was going to be a computer game designer when I grew up for a while. I went off to college and I got attracted to philosophy because I really want to balance sort of the systematic rigor of computer science with the sort of liberal arts. I fell in love with some English classes in high school, and philosophy was kind of a unification of those for me. And it was actually very similar to programming. Both philosophy and programming, you're working with symbols and abstractions. So I did that. Then
Structured thought.
Exactly.
Incredible. Now, I want to touch on, obviously, Bubble's got a, what you would consider in software, a fairly long tenure. It's been around since 2012. But kind of the culture of technology, because, I don't take this as a critique by any means. But there was a period when it was okay, these low code apps with visual builders, quote unquote, they're not real. They're not robust enough maybe for enterprise application. Of course, from a security standpoint and deployment, we understand that these platforms are quite robust. But there was, I think in the backs of the minds of, many an enterprise developer of oh, well, we really need to actually manage the whole stack and really touch bare metal in order for this to be a real application.
Right.
But then you kind of fast forward to the present moment, and we've kind of zoomed past that security concern, and, people are vibe coding.
Yep.
And, fully just embedding, API keys into client-side code. And we somehow have seemed to just kind of leapfrogged past all these concerns that the platforms had. How are you guys working with AI, and how are you being affected by this sort of vibe coding culture that's emerged, with everybody just generating random things that look like applications, but might be an absolute mess under the hood?
Yeah, so it's actually totally flipped, right? As you're saying, the stereotype of no-code platforms was they weren't serious. And today we're actually positioning ourselves as the serious alternative to vibe coding, because when you have AI spin out millions of lines of code, right, there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be bugs, and especially if non-technical people, non-engineers, entrepreneurs, business people are working with it, there's no way they're going to have safe, robust code. Whereas a platform like Bubble, we're teaching AI to speak Bubble fluently. So you get that same kind of vibe codey, fast feel. But what we're outputting is these Lego blocks we've sort of carefully designed to be robust from a security standpoint. So actually, like, the game has changed. Now it's like the no-code platforms that are the robust solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been pretty fascinated myself to just learn about the fact that it's given a rise to like a total like kind of subset of, hacking and exploitation. I'm just looking for vibe coded apps,
Yeah.
inspecting client-side code. Invariably you're going to find database keys and all sorts of things just right there. And it's pretty horrific when you think about it. But the AI, sort of wave kind of washed over us as almost like a tsunami. And on the tech side, for once, we kind of haven't caught up to that level.
Yeah.
So has this changed your message and how you guys are communicating, or is there an appreciation now you're finding that Bubble, no code that has serious engineering under the hood, that these are viable ways of doing things?
Yeah, we're definitely picking up the like vibe code refugees, or like people who like rush onto it, get super excited, build a prototype, and then realize that there's no way for them to get the prototype to something they can actually build a business around. And we've definitely been like being like sort of the safety net, I guess, or the fallback for people doing that. And so yeah, definitely.
So I want to go back a little bit to how you got started though, because like even low code platforms like today, they make a lot of sense. It's like, it's so obvious that we need this and it fills a massive need. But when I kind of rewind myself to 2012
Yeah.
and, the maturity of the internet and, where we're at with social media and apps and the rest of it, like it seems crazy early at that time to even have this as an idea, let alone mature enterprise and building applications on top of it. What was the original impetus where you said, okay, I'm going to team up with somebody and we got to go solve this?
Yeah. So it's fine. Like our sort of true north back then is the same as our true north today, which is really letting entrepreneurs express directly what they want to create and having the computer be smart enough to build it for them. And, makes sense today, made sense in 2012. And I got there basically by working with people and seeing, them hit this brick wall of, I need an engineer. I don't have funding. The VCs will give me funding if I build a product. I can build a product if I have an engineer, like this strategy way too.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But you guys also, yourselves actually kind of sidestepped some of that catch-22 because you bootstrapped for the first number of years. Is that right?
Yeah.
And how did you build a team and how were you able to kind of was it just entirely internal knowledge, yourself and the co-founder, but how were you able to bootstrap for that long before you built out a team with investment?
Yeah, so we focused from the early days on like chasing customers with like real needs, right? So we found some early customers who were able to fund a lot of our development by just building, technology for them that lets them scale up their businesses on top of us. We stayed super lean.
So you started with customers.
Yeah. We were working with customers from, I mean, I was trying to sell Bubble before I wrote the first line of code. People didn't bite. Like I remember making a pitch of like, hey, do you want to like build your startup on my new experimental platform? I haven't started building. I'll give you a discount.
So it's 2012. We don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Right. Did not land at all. But once we had like even a very, very, very bare bones product, we were working with customers on it.
What are the biggest challenges you've had since then? I mean, I imagine you learned a lot. I mean, it's a different thing to be working for a massive, asset management company versus, back in the garage with a friend building a thing. What are the biggest challenges you had along the way?
Yeah. It's been quite a journey. There's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs. I think the hardest part in the early stages was just keeping going, right? Because there's a long period of time where it wasn't obvious that Bubble was going to become a successful company. And we had enough customers who liked us enough to like have that, thin strand of hope. But like, when you're living in like a tiny little New York City apartment, barely making rent, trying to like squeak through, like, you sort of cling on. And then once we started getting a little bit more traction and our customer base started growing, then the challenges became all about scaling, right? Because customers depend on us. They build their businesses on top of us. We are the center of their tech stack. So we have a pretty big obligation. And if we screw up, it has a big impact on our customers. So figuring out how to take this sort of garage company and make it robust and to the degree it is today, like, production grade hosting platform, that was quite a journey too. And I had to learn a ton to sort of move the company along that pathway.
Yeah. No, I imagine it is a huge responsibility. Like we were just talking to some other founders earlier today. about how important that early sort of those early engineering hires are, because for some startups it's make or break, right?
Yeah.
You might have a founder with a vision and a dream, maybe even a network and some investment, but if the engineering fails, I mean, that's everything. That's the foundation, right?
Yep.
But you guys gotten to a point where there's a pretty massive ecosystem. There's entire organizations, there's whole businesses that are built on your platform. Where does it go from here? Like,
Yeah.
what's the next big thing for Bubble?
Yeah, so I think going back to what we were talking earlier about vibe coding, I think that's just blown the walls off this market basically, right? People realize now that like really you non-technical people ought to be able to create software super quickly, right? Like we were preaching that gospel and now like everyone believes it. So for me, it's making sure that the transition into that world is a good one for customers where they really realize that promise and realize that promise not just making a prototype, but actually making real production apps that they can scale with because that will be, the entrepreneurial ecosystem has assumed for the last 3 decades that writing software was the bottleneck to entrepreneurship. That assumption is going to change.
Yeah.
And helping companies navigate that assumption is kind of what we're in the business of right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the sort of cultural amplification that AI has applied to everything, right, is that on the one hand, it's blown the lid off things and exponential ideas, huge growth. We can do anything. But on the other hand, the also massive amplification of mediocrity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The copywriting we used to see, we see way more, and worse design and now on the code side. Yeah, I mean, but honestly, like the AI slop thing has been interesting to us, even for our team. Like, I mean, my day job, I run a digital agency in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, there's a intense need and opportunity to kind of draw AI to the center of what we do.
Yep.
But then there's a real concern around the amount of amplification it does for mediocrity, right?
Yeah.
And whereas before, with maybe some mediocre engineering, you might have shot yourself in the foot. And now we're basically handing people like a bazooka, right? And there's not a lot, I feel, of conversation happening on the testing and the pushback against this.
Yep.
So whether it's exploitation, data breaches, like we're going to be going through massive periods of this, right?
Yeah. It's gonna be wild.
Yeah. I mean, so there's almost like an industry coming up around just the testing and security side, right? I think cybersecurity is going to be more prevalent as a message than ever, just because we're standing up millions of weak systems suddenly, right?
Yep.
Is there a concerted interest, focus, anything special that you guys are doing on the cybersecurity side to kind of reassure maybe existing clients or the market to say, actually, this is safer and better than ever because of the amount of weakness that's being introduced into software?
Yeah, so our philosophy is like shifting security left and getting it early in the design process, right? Like I think when you have like millions of weak things being stood up and then like an industry of like security solutions being patched on top, like that's getting it backwards, right? You want to build things secure from the get-go. So on our platform, we're trying to make security part of the design process. We have auditing features built into the platform. So like in the development environment, we're running checks against customer applications and letting them know, oh, hey, like this credential might be exposed. You need to change that like as part of the build process, not as part of the post-deployment process was out there in the world. I also just am a huge believer in AI slot, the whole AI slop discourse of keeping a human in the loop, right?
Mhm.
Like our design philosophy around AI tools is that they have to interact with the human and tell the human what they're doing so that there can be a good back and forth because that's how you get things that aren't mediocre but still get that acceleration that AI gives. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything happening in whether it's low code on one end of the spectrum all the way through to like, deep technology development that you're seeing even on the industry that you think aligns with your mission or that you're excited about?
Yeah. So we kind of compare ourselves in a way to sort of the tools like Cursor or oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. What's the surf one? Windsurf. That are really aligned with professional expert developers and helping them leverage themselves, because that sort of ties into that human in the loop strategy, right? So we're trying to bring that experience to everyone, the same experience that like really like senior developers, like ones who know code inside out, are loving AI because they don't have the slot problem, they don't have the security problem, they know what AI is doing. So we really respect tools that are catering to that, and we're trying to use that as like inspiration for how we're trying to bring that experience to everyone.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you see Windsurf and Cursor almost kind of like kind of siblings in this movement.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's very cool. How big's your team now?
Right now it's about 150 people.
Okay. So still, I mean, relatively lean actually, for the impact that you're making. Um, where did you sort of attract your initial developers when you kind of went from bootstrapped to, oh my God, this thing's going, now we're chasing it.
Yeah.
What did you learn? How do you build that initial team?
Yeah, a lot of open platforms, like we used AngelList back in the day, had a really great network for for engineers who are really passionate about startups. So a lot of our initial hiring went through that, and I think a lot of startup founders have like a network-based hiring story. We've actually never really done that. We've been pretty disciplined about like having like a sort of structured recruitment process, reaching out, trying to find the best talent no matter like what network they're a part of, gain them in the door, and then sort of evaluating them in a fair, systematic way. And we've gotten better at that over the years, and what I find is that leads to people who have a diversity of opinions and backgrounds, but are unified by caring about our mission and having just top rate technical skills.
Hmm. If somebody was starting a tech company tomorrow, I keep threatening to. I haven't yet. So we work with tech companies. We work in that space.
Yeah.
What advice would you give today, based on what's happening, and to basically, if we were starting from zero today, knowing what we know, what would be your advice on attracting talent, building a company, using technology properly?
Yeah. Build first would be my advice. Like, there's a bunch of activities in the early stages, right? Like, there's attracting investment, attracting employees, getting brand recognition, building. I think, I've always believed that like you need to start with the product, because the faster you have something real that people value, the easier it is for all the other activities to go around it. I think today, with how cheap and fast building is getting, I think it's crazy to hire someone or raise money before you've already built a V1 and proven that V1 works in the market.
Hmm. Excellent. Um, so looking out into the future, Bubble continues to do what it's doing. The vision has sort of been realized. What does the company look like? What's the impact you've had on the world?
Yeah. So we've had 6 million people create applications on us. And we actually have been working with Stripe and some other of the payment processors we use to estimate the volume of transactions that happen through Bubble. And it looks like last year there was about $1 billion in financial transactions that happened through Bubble built apps, which I actually like more than the number of builders statistic, because it sort of speaks to the economic
It
impact.
makes it kind of real.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the impact we're having? Incredible.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Best of luck with everything you're doing in the future. So far, I've been a tinkerer on Bubble, but I think at some point we're going to come back and do something serious on Bubble.
Amazing. Looking forward to it, and thanks for having me.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we've given you a lot to think about. That was High Agency. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.